William Shawcross now to talk about foreign policy. Sorry, you know what Ammar Anwar said was that it is the drip, drip, drip effect of various stages of foreign policy which radicalises young Muslims. But if you change foreign policy, is that tantamount to appeasement?
Well, of course it's tantamount. It is appeasement if you change foreign policy because people are threatening to blow up airliners if you don't. And I think Muslim extremists should be asked. Muslim extremists should be asked what it is about our foreign policy.
Is immoral as it is.
But
I beg your pardon?
Just Bianca Jagger is saying if the foreign policy is immoral, but then what would be immoral?
Well, look, let's hang on a minute. Hang on a minute.
What would change Al Qaeda's position?
Morality is when you adhere to international law, when you don't have double standards, when you try to bring peace with justice, when you do not give just simply the go-ahead to a country while we are seeing the killing of innocent civilians on television day after day.
A really important example of, I mean, there are double standards out there. We've got to accept that there are. And I'll just give you an example of some of the frustration out there amongst the Muslim community. We've got resolutions, 39 and 59 years old, UN resolutions on Kashmir and Palestine not implemented. A resolution on Afghanistan implemented in 5 minutes, and one on Iraq wasn't needed. You know, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to work this out. I've just been in the States. All I heard was Resolution 1559. That's for the disarming effectively Hezbollah. What about Resolution 91, 122, 242, 338?
I agree.
These are the problems.
As a foreign minister, I think he makes a perfectly fair point. And there is foreign policy involvement in this, in the sense that we, the West, supported the jihadis. Do you remember all those guys from Sandy Gall and others who went off to fight in Afghanistan and created jihadism? In Britain, in the last decade, and I remember this passionately in my own constituency, the fact that Sir Malcolm Rifkind and John Major wouldn't lift a finger to stop the massacre at Srebrenica, that made Muslims furious with rage. You can't disconnect the foreign policy attitude.
Coming back to Glasgow now, to Ammar Anwar, and you talk about the fact that foreign policy has had this huge impact, particularly on young Muslims that you see in the street. But the point is, surely, what appeasement would achieve when you have Al Qaeda before 1999 saying that they wanted to get the Americans out of Saudi, and then they moved on to talk about Palestine. It's shifting sands, isn't it? Would you ever make a difference to someone like bin Laden?
See, I'm not talking about appeasement. What I'm talking about is a constituency that likes of Osama bin Laden appeal to. That constituency now stretches from Glasgow to Bradford to London, from Kuala Lumpur to Karachi. If we want to win that constituency to a peaceful coexistence, it's not a question about appeasement. It's about talking about the double standards. It's when we see the direct insult that Tony Blair declared on the whole Muslim world by saying that those who support Chechnya, those who support those fighting the resistance in Kashmir, those who fight in Palestine or Lebanon are equated. If I could finish, are equated
I'll come to you, William Shawcross, in a moment.
Are equated with the homicidal and paranoid tendencies of Al Qaeda is completely an insult to the whole Muslim world. And
but
as
the problem
Shahid said,
is that the common cause between Hamas...
Nobody is talking about appeasement here. What we're talking about is the double standards, and what again and again what we require to look at is how is it that we go from a situation in September 2001 where there was no suicide bombers in this country to now where we have the intelligence services quite correctly saying we have 1,000 people willing to go to the cause of martyrdom.
William Shawcross.
Cornwall calling.
Yes.
It's when I think Muslim leaders and Muslim spokesmen should be asked what it is exactly they object to. Do they object to the fact that Britain helped overthrow the worst killer of Muslims in the last few decades? Saddam Hussein was denounced by the United Nations Human Rights Commission as the gravest violator of human rights in the 1990s. Do they object to the fact that the West has been supporting Muslims in Bosnia and in Kosovo? Blair was very, very influential in getting the NATO into Kosovo. Do they object to the fact that we are desperately trying and have been trying for years now to stop the slaughter of Muslims by Muslims in Darfur? And we've failed because Arab governments, led by the Sudanese government, refused to allow that humanitarian intervention. But when we talk about double standards, look at Muslims killing Muslims. Most Muslims dying today are dying at the hands of other Muslims.
William, I'll tell you about double British standards. Muslims. It's okay when you prop up Saddam Hussein as the Americans did. It's okay when you create Saddam Hussein as the Americans did. That's not double standards, is it? But the point I want to make, this is a really important one. Frustration has to be channelled in this country in a positive way. The only way we can do that is through the democratic...
I agree with you, but we won't be able to even begin this discussion until Britain, I don't mind Catholic, Jewish, immigrant, Scots, Irish, Welsh, unite and say that you stop killing. Find the John Hume road. Find the
I agree.
Well, no, I'm sorry.
I
You
agree with that,
agree.
Dennis.
But the emails you and I received, the websites, the statements, the arguments also from the Trotskyist parties and the others supporting what is, if we were in the 1930s, you and I would be agreeing, saying this is fascism. It's anti-Jewish. It denies the right of women. It denies the right of democracy.
But the problem in this country,
but
Dennis,
in 2006, we're in denial.
Shall we've only got a very short time to go, and I just want to ask you a final question. What would be the first thing that you think that could be done in this country, first of all, to address the whole question of homegrown terrorism and to address the attitude that young Muslims have, that they do not feel part of a culture in this country that is anything other than makes them victims? There does not seem to be somebody in the community that prepared to stand up and talk about that.
Well, 2 points. I mean, firstly, I would say broadly that we've got to accept that there is a culture of denial about the size of the problem. We've got a serious problem of extremism within the Muslim community. In the same way as I say to the white community, the BNP is a white phenomenon, you've got to take the leadership. The same is true of the Muslim community. But to people who are frustrated, what I've got to say is that you've got to engage in the democratic process.
I agree.
Violence is not the answer. Democracy is the only answer.
I agree.
Violence is not the answer, and I think that the answer will be probably to get rid of Tony Blair. Tony Blair's foreign policy... No, Tony Blair's foreign policy has failed miserably.
William Shawcross, you've got 30 seconds. William, you've got 30 seconds.
Kirsty Cornwall.
30 seconds.
When Bianca says get rid of Tony Blair and it will be all OK, I'm reminded that one of the first attacks in Iraq after the fall of Saddam by Al-Qaeda was on the United Nations. They killed 19 very fine members of the United Nations, some of Kofi Annan's most important staff. They murdered them deliberately to destroy the United Nations efforts in Iraq, and they denounced Sergio Vieira de Mello, the leader of Kofi Annan's team in Iraq, as a diseased heretic, an adjutant of the criminal slave Kofi Annan. That is what Al-Qaeda is about. That is what Islamic extremism is about. It's destroying the international system that we have. It's not about just Tony Blair and
Thank you.
And
Thank you. I'm afraid I'm going to have to stop
the
you all there. We'll run right out of time on that.